Well, the fact that both of these trainers, not only are they performing at the highest of levels, they are performing and succeeding with one of their most favorite Pokemon. I've had a couple of deliberations on who is the true biggest bear fan and stan, and yeah, I think both of them at this point. It's a bundle deal essentially, and they're both really, really good at playing that in all of the different teams that they've got. And one that we know, for example, that's been building up and actually won an online grassroots community tournament as well is a variation with Sneasler and Iron Bundle.
Yep, Iron Bundle, one of those Pokemon that you see a little bit less of, but right now we are seeing it here on Nikolaj's side with that pesky Encore. Encore I've been seeing a lot as well in these high power formats as well. But look, we already have like a glimpse of the future with Sneasler being here, but with the Electricity trying to get that Unburden boost and then being able to provide so much damage output, not going for any Dire Claws or anything, but just the coverage that it carries already. It has such a strong close combat. Gunk Shot is also a very powerful stab option that it can have, and then Throat Chop to make sure to get rid of those pesky Calyrexes.
Yeah, exactly. And you do obviously have to give caution to the wind when it comes to its accuracy. It's not the most reliable, like you mentioned, but there's just so much offensive backing when it comes to its options in particular. But then again, we've got Simone's side of the field as well, rocking the trusted and true Calyrex Shadow Rider and Zamazenta core with the accompanying Chien-Pao, Dragonite, Raging Bolt, and the Amoonguss. So the good old-fashioned Chien-Pao Dragonite duo is actually coming back quite strong with an Assault Vest variant power, which is really, really fascinating to see, as we've seen a couple of stark highlights of how Ruination as an item choice on Chien-Pao, you could combine that with a Calyrex or even a Zamazenta, I'd say more specifically, in order to be able to pick up KOs that you necessarily wouldn't, maybe against Pokemon such as Lunala, for example.
Yep. No, absolutely. Ruination is just such an amazing tool to have. Low, taking exactly 50% of the remaining HP of your Pokemon, making sure that you are able to get those KO ranges in the next turn or in that same turn as well, as you mentioned, because Chien-Pao tends to be fast as Zamazenta, and Zamazenta sometimes misses the KO just by a bit. So a strong Ruination like that could certainly prove to be very useful. And as you said, Dragonite and Chien-Pao, it's a tale as old as time, these Pokemon being back next to each other. Being able to provide their just priority spamming extreme speed and sucker punches despite that. And yes, we are very excited to see what these players are bringing as we will go into the match in just a bit. But I do think that we don't have the Zamazenta Calyrex mirror, but we do have a live up Miraidon on Nikolaj's side, which I do think is quite interesting.
Oh, 100%, especially when you're able to power that up even further with the Terra Electric multiplier, which, as we've mentioned, there's such a fascinating way how multipliers can compound, especially when, you know, stacked on top of one another in order to reach heights unfathomable. You pick up KOs or you hit damage calcs that normally you wouldn't expect from this kind of Pokemon. You'd expect, okay, sure. You know, Miraidon, just generally speaking, is always going to be choice specs variant locked, as you know, we know it's so popular, but being able to have the choice of alternating, you've got a Volt Switch as well, in order to be able to have some sort of pivot move to bring a Pokemon in. Let's say, for example, you lead with the Miraidon and the Farigiraf, you could go for that Volt Switch and bring the good old-fashioned Blood Moon Ursaluna in if you want to try to opt for that slower mode.
Yeah, I do think Ursaluna Blood Moon is just such a good Pokemon as well, because it's kind of being able to be a very good Pokemon versus some of these restricted, especially if you have a choice spec Miraidon being locked into an electric move. Guess what? This bear is a ground type, so does not really mind any sort of electric type moves. Oh, you want to Astro Barrage? Guess what? I am also a normal type, so I do not care still. And then it's that ability as well. The ability, of course, being able to hit ghost types with its normal type moves as well, which just showcasing, especially in a format like this, where there are quite a few ghost types that are very strong. can prove to be very useful as you are able to just make sure that nothing is able to resist whatever blood moon is coming out of your third eye.
Well, exactly, and it's just got such a unique ability too. The fact that you're able to go ahead and essentially have a scrappy on-demand worked in with an additional way of making sure that you can never miss any move, because it's sort of like the keen eye integration as well, hence why we see Mind's Eye here. But just generally speaking, it's such a powerful Pokemon. Blood Moon, the move itself, 150 base power, you can hit it only one time. The following turn you can't use it unless you've got cheeky little shenanigans with an on-call by its side, but in this scenario, Nikolaj does not. But Silk Staff is another form of way to be able to further damage output, especially when it comes to just the normal types, which is so trustingly relies on. But there's different variations of strategies you could go for from Nikolaj's side. But let's try to focus a bit on the matchup itself, Shimon.
Yeah.
How are we feeling each trainer's go-to Pokemon would be? Do you feel like there's any sort of like crucial main pieces that they're wanting to sort of navigate the condition for?
I honestly think that the Sneasler is actually going to be quite a good piece to have, especially in with that Dark Terra, for example. It is able to resist the Acid Barrage coming out from the Calyrex Shadow, but is also still able to threaten it with a Throat Chop, putting it to Sash, and then potentially another Pokemon picking up that KO there. But also with its just natural typing, being able to just close combat a lot of these Pokemon still. Gunshot is still a very powerful move, being able to hit things like Amoonguss, for example. But I don't think Amoonguss is coming to the field, so I do think Throat Chop and close combat are the way to go here. And Sneasler plus Miraidon, I can definitely see like providing Nikolaj a lot of utility here.
Yeah, 100%. And it sort of also invites the thought to Simone's mind of, oh, okay, normally I've got Chi and Power, Dragonite, you know, so far I've gone through Swiss round number 2. We don't know the details, but they're part of the team. They've been doing great, maybe, potentially. But in this matchup, who knows? But in this matchup, at least when it comes to the priority focus that and availability that Simone's got on his side of the field, in particular with the Dragonite, and I guess the second punch from the Chi and Power and Thunderclap, we've got the Farigiraf's Armor Tail in play. And we know that when it comes to this sort of team composition, the Miraidon always loves having its good old buddy Farigiraf by its side. If there's a Trick Room mode that you can go for, or if you want to go more on the offensive, straight off the bat, proc the Unburden via the Electric Seed method, and you got double speed, you can just go for like a Miraidon Sneasler lead, and you got Zama in the back if need be to rotate in. And if you want to get a bit cheeky, even have the bundle there. Start breaking focus sashes where you can. So I could easily see a lot of these different Pokemon come in as a lead to begin with. So Nikolaj already has a lot of options going.
Yeah, it's a good thing that you pointed out the Iron Bottom, because of course it is providing that speed boost next to the Miraidon, because it's getting that core drive boost, so it will be the fastest thing. Being able to ice you in just as well, speed control, meaning you, as you said, you break the focus sash on the CSR and then able to KO it with another attack from the Miraidon itself. I do think, like as you mentioned, like the speed, like now that you mentioned about the priority and stuff, I do think if Nikolaj is able to get Trick Room up with Farigiraf and the Ursaluna next to each other, that does seem kind of devastating, especially if you somehow already got that electric tree going, so that Amoonguss isn't able to really punish your Trick Room either, because that feels like one of the few options really Simone has against Nikolaj's onslaught of these normal types within Trick Room.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess there is the additional factor of the Earth Power from the Ursaluna doesn't get a damage boost via what is usually the Life Orb. In this case, Miraidon's nabbed that little item. So there could be a scenario where the Zamazenta could actually survive maybe even a 2-shot to 3-shot range, depending on how bulky the Zamazenta can be. We're expecting the Ursaluna to be the classic, modest, just maybe slower sort of speed, unless there's a case where Ursaluna, I know that Nikolaj in the past has run a couple of fast Blood-Run Ursalunas. They normally have Tailwind available. There is technically Icy Wind, and I'm trying to think. There's quite a few Pokemon middle tier speed, and there could be a scenario where Ursaluna could actually have a bit of speed on it in order to be able to bypass them or outpace them after one Icy Wind drop on their side. So different mind games, but it does feel like the ball's in Nikolaj's court, right?
Yeah, it's still a very valuable option to say the least, because being able to have like a fast Ursaluna, and for example, there is a Dragonite on the field, or the Zamazenta, definitely, they aren't always full speed in that regard. Sometimes they are a bit bulkier as well, especially if you can see it survives Earth Power 2 or 3 times, then you know it's quite bulky. So potentially the option is there for 2 Icy Wind and to get the speed advantage with Ursaluna. And honestly, a fast Ursaluna is one of the is also kind of scary at times, because we've seen Raghav, the first time with getting the win with the Miraidon as well, with that Tailwind mode as well, where it was able to outspeed all the necessary threats and be able to absolutely demolish any Pokemon in front of it. Because that is the scary part of Ursaluna Blood Moon. If it has the advantage, it is one of the scariest Pokemon that isn't even a restricted.
It's not. I know. I had a chat with Game Freak. I sent an email. I was like, are you sure Blood Moon Ursaluna is not a restricted? Because it just keeps on winning and picking up KOs it really shouldn't. And they did not respond. But I'm imagining they would have... Definitely spam folder, no doubt about it. But I agree. I think we are fellow worshippers of the Blood Moon, Ursaluna. But what we do have is exciting news. We had been waiting for our players to get ready, and they are ready. We have got Game 1 leads, featuring the Calyrex Shadow Rider and Amoonguss from Simone's side versus Nikolaj's good old trusted Miraidon and a cheeky little bundle of not joy, ice.
Bundle of Ice is the right term to say, as the core drive is raising its speed, so immediately you are able to get that speed advantage with an Icy Wind, making sure that you ignore, for example, that reach part that could come out from this Amoonguss. But on the other hand, this Miraidon only has single target moves, so this Amoonguss, his reach part will stay effective, especially as long as this Miraidon is not really able to hit it. It's also a very scary thing to have, because if the Calyrex is able to just absolutely go ham with its strong move here with the Astral Barrage and going for that Terra just as well, you better hide, you better run, because this is gonna hit hard.
Oh yeah, that's sort of the beauty of being able to have the Focus Sash Calyrex. You're able to capitalize off of finally getting an additional multiplier when it comes to its damage output via the Ghost Terra, as we've got Amoonguss going for the Rage Powder. Sure, it's not going to go for Spores, but the real question here is wanting to make sure it can provide the support that's needed on this Calyrex, that has its speed dropped via the Icy Wind, broken Focus Sash as well. Volt Switch, this isn't choice specs, but it still hits pretty hard, and especially onto a Pokemon not only as bulky as Amoonguss, but also having the resistance against the Electrotyping, as the Miraidon got itself straight out for that Ursaluna, making the preview. Oh my lordy, could this be a case of double Icy Wind, allowing the Ursaluna to outspeed? We're going to have to find out the next turn, as the Astral Barrage will be coming out, bringing the Iron Bundle down to its Focus Sash. But because of that smooth switch-in of the Ursaluna, it's going to absolutely nullify the Ghost-type move into that slot.
It is absolutely insane to see how Nikolaj just saw the opportunity. Yeah, this bear is gonna come in very safely and being able to provide so much offensive prowess right now as well. Because as you said, another Ice Wind could put this Calyrex slower than his Ursaluna, depending on how fast his Ursaluna is trained and depending how fast this Calyrex is trained. But that is a very scary thought to have at the very least. Certainly when you just dedicated your Terra immediately to not even KOing any of these Pokemon or having any substantial damage, because a Focus Sash has been used, but the bundle is still on the field.
Yeah, exactly. As we're going to be seeing the introduction of the Zamazenta. Amoonguss got itself out there in order to be able to proc that Regenerator ability, get a bit of HP back, as well as the Iron Bundle has gone on the defensive this time round, wanted to go for the Protect. It will be able to forego the Psychic targeted to that spot, and the Earth Power will be able to pick up a 2-shot ranged move onto the Zamazenta, bringing it down to 49 hit points on the switch.
That is absolutely devastating damage, to say the least. We were talking about Zamazenta being able to tank 2-3 hits of these. 3 is not in the cards, but 2 certainly is, as right now. It is still dependent on how fast this Zamazenta is trained as well, because you do still have a Terra option, for example, on either of these Pokemon as well. But an Icy Wind, lowering the speed on either of these Pokemon, giving you the option to bring Miraidon in back later again as well, because you do have still Protect potential with that Ursaluna as well. And you just keep on having this advantage here, as we do have to protect from the Ursaluna, exactly going into that thought process that I had of trying to protect it. Freeze Dry, damage this Calyx as much as possible, and the body press going right into the Ursaluna as the Calyx. Oh wait, now we do have the information as well that the Calyx at -1 will be slower than the Zamazenta, so the Zamazenta does happen to have some speed invested at the very least, as the Psychic is picking up the kill on this pesky Iron Bundle.
Yeah, has been felled, and it will give the Calyrex an additional boost in its special attack via the Grim Neigh ability. Of course, a sub-part of the as one ability. But most crucially, Nikolaj has now got a free slot in order to be able to bring in a fresh Pokemon from the start, potentially from the start, that being the Miraidon. It's got some options of being able to be brought in right now and directly threaten the Zamazenta, as it has already taken so much damage. You got options of even picking up a KO with the Volt Switch at this point, unless you want to try to dedicate a more powerful move into it in anticipation of that Amoonguss being brought back in. I could easily see a Terra Electric, Electro Drift, maybe being enough to do it if we see the Amoonguss being brought in.
Yeah, that is a very viable option, to say the very least, because Miraidon is already scary with the choice specs. Life Orb is still making it scary, but then you got that added bonus of the Terra Electric, which is absolutely devastating, especially if the terrain is up, because Miraidon is, of course, a very powerful Pokemon that is enjoying its electric terrain left and right, as we will see that the Calyx is actually opting to switch out. So maybe it is going to be that Amoonguss trying to tank whatever hit is coming in, but it is rather the Raging Ball trying to tank whatever electric move. Quad resistant as well, but still very fearful of any sort of Dragon Pulses of Draco Meteors that might be coming out.
Yeah, as the Zamazenta goes for the Protect, but this could be a very risky switch in here if there's going to be a follow-up, double up, should I say, of the Volt Switch Earth Power into the slot, anticipating what I would probably say a very obvious defensive play from the Zamazenta slot. This is going to be a bit dubious, but we're going to have to see what Nikolaj is going to target right now, and with what type as well. Farigiraf revealed as the 4th Pokemon, Earth Power. No, just trying to go for the safe focus of the Zamazenta. You can clearly see how Zamazenta was very frightful of the Miraidon's position there with the outspeed. But Farigiraf brings a different dynamic onto the field now, being so much slower.
Yeah, and this is one of the positions that we were talking about earlier, where if the Ursaluna is able to get that Trick Room going, these 2 normal types, how do you stop this onslaught? So I do think that Simone might be recognizing this potential option and going for a double into that Farigiraf, trying to deal with it. But it is fully dependent on Nikolaj, because he as well can just read into that and try to just attack with the Ursaluna Blood Moon just as well. So the options here are weighing down, because you need to remember these players have played before, so they will have to think, what is the other player thinking? As we add the Terra from the Farigiraf going into that Terra ground, making sure that no Thunderbolt will be able to hit it.
Yeah, a lovely way to be able to set up Trick Room and guarantee it at this point. I would probably say, excluding any sort of critical hits from a Body Press. But no, the Body Press trying to target down the Ursaluna. Unfortunately, Simone didn't get the call right, not only on one account, on a second account, as the T-Bolt did indeed try to target down the now ground-type Farigiraf. And all of a sudden, we've got Nikolaj getting the most free Trick Room being set up. And all of a sudden, absolutely flipping this game on its head.
Yeah, as where we lost the Iron Bundle, trying to have that speed control, the Farigiraf reverting the speeds here. So this Ursaluna is about to be well, honestly, the scariest thing alive right now, as it is able to threaten and KO on either of these Pokemon. There's not really a really good switch in. You can just make sure that one of your Pokemon faint and then bring out the Amoonguss later to then potentially try and spore the Ursaluna. But then we have the added feature of that being Rhydon being able to provide electric trade and thus not being able to put that Ursaluna to sleep. And we do have the Raging Ball switching out into Meow, which is, of course, that Amoonguss.
Yeah, not a sound that you'd expect the Mushroom to be able to do. But regardless, Protect from the Zamazenta. The question is, does Nikolaj read the slot? No, he goes for the Earth Power into the Zamazenta. This could easily be a Psychic from the Farigiraf in anticipation of the Amoonguss, and it is. It will be able to target down, not pick up the KO, just barely missing it, leaving it on 19 hit points.
Yeah, 19 hit points is what you're working with right now. So you do have the option, the mind game here really, if there's gonna be a Miraidon switch in or not. And if it is, you can potentially, if you have access to it, of course, to Pollen Puff, being able to heal up your Zamazenta and try and metagame a little bit here and thinking what Nikolaj might be trying to play at, because you still have 2 more full turns of Trick Room and you need to deal with this bear as soon as possible.
Yeah, and it's very awkward right now because you got Amoonguss on the field, so surely this invites Nikolaj to bring the Miraidon in order to be able to negate any spores being chucked down, as we do see Farigiraf being the choice of slot there. But then again, this depends. Is there going to be a redirection or a spore from this Amoonguss? This is going to be quite crucial right now. There is no redirection, which means this Ursaluna may well have just caught the Zamazenta finally with an Earth Power. 3rd time's the charm. It just finally fell down. The powerful dog-like Pokemon. But then again, this is still the first of Simone's Pokemon. Even though we're pretty much 5 or 6 turns into this game, he's finally dropped a Pokemon.
Yeah, 1 Pokemon down, still a turn of Trick Room left, 2 more turns. That you will have to consider what your options are. You do have Protect, making sure that you're able to survive at least for 1 turn. You're able to redirect with your Amoonguss at least for 1 turn as well, as you are able to try to deal as much damage as possible, because right now this Raging Bolt is free to go for any sort of Dragon type move on any of these targets, because, well, let's be honest, 2 Ground types, 1 Electric Dragon, not really a lot of good targets for any sort of Thunderbolts there in that regard.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And yeah, at this point, you just want to be able to capitalize off of the remaining turns of Trick Room. You've still got the options, like you mentioned, of doing the couple of switch outs, maybe in anticipation, but I think the Miraidon's probably going to stay put until at least 1 more turn, as it does go for the Protect, followed suit, of course, by the Raging Bolt. That went for it, but the Sludge Bomb will be targeting down the Ursaluna. We know it's its only offensive move, and the Earth Bower did try to target down the Raging Bolt too. So a bit of a stalemate here, and a bit of damage dealt onto the Ursaluna. I'm not sure this is gonna help the situation, though. Simone is gonna have to lose a Pokemon, potentially too, if he wants to try to win this out with the Calyrex in the back.
Yeah, so not that many options. You do have the positive aspect that the Farigiraf did Terrestrialize, so it is no longer immune to your Astral Barrage, it is no longer resisting your Psychic from your Calyrex Shadow, but you still dedicated your Terra onto it, and Ghost type moves aren't really the thing you want to click with an Ursaluna still on the field. So I do think there is a way out here for Simone, but it is going to be tight, as the Miraidon is the one opting to switch out, going into the Farigiraf, as we know that the Farigiraf is still at full health, so being able to tank certainly a hit from this Raging Bolt. Rage Powder coming out from this Amoonguss, making sure that at least the Earth Powder will not be hitting it. Hyper Voice instead coming out, covering perfectly what could be a Rage Powder.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at this point, the hyper voices are so free in order to be able to deal the damage and just sweep up the rest of the Pokemon remaining, as obviously Mind's Eye is able to bypass the ghost type immunity. And we saw Raging Bolt wasn't quite able to pick up the KO onto the Farigiraf in order to be able to start speeding this process down. And just a very quick note, seems like the overall time of this match is down to 50 seconds on the top right. So a bit of a grueler between both of our trainers, but Calyrex is now on the field, even though there still is the Ursaluna. The question is, can you get rid of it and allow Calyrex the room to start sweeping? Because, like you said, Shmon, there is that reverse sweep potential Simone's got going.
Yeah, so that is exactly what he's banking on. We already saw that Simone looked into attacking the Ursaluna, but Nikolaj has to decide if he's actually going for that option, because a Protect plus a Trick Room could very well be just as safe of a play. But no, it is not. There's just a Psychic coming out into the Ursaluna. Ursaluna still hanging on by a thread. Dragon Pulse coming through, meaning that this Farigiraf is the only Pokemon left on the field right now. It is still threatening a KO onto this Calyrex because it is carrying that foul play, if I recall correctly. But instead, it is going for that Trick Room, meaning that right now the Farigiraf is the slowest thing on the field. But as long as it doesn't threaten a KO onto this Raging Bolt might be running away with the game.
Yeah, it very well might, actually. But I'm a bit unsure of Nikolaj's play there, if I'm completely honest, because you want to be able to maybe position yourself to the point where you don't have Trick Room set up. You do outspeed with the Miraidon in order to be able to outpace the Raging Bolt, which right now you're susceptible to because of the Dragon Pulse, and it's got electric terrain, so it's got a tiny bit more power in the tank in allowing, I would say, well, the boost energy or not, but the foul play doesn't even pick up the KO. It remains on 3 HP. Dragon Pulse, to be completely honest, with no further boost available, might not have even been enough. Astral Barrage, though, might just be, because of the additional multiplier from the Terra Ghost, goes into the Farigiraf target, even if it is not single target. Damage move, it is enough. And it gives it the +1 in special attack right now. And all of a sudden, that clutch survival from the foul play really pulls through, and essentially at this point guarantees Simone the win against Nikolaj's just effort through it. And you see the timer's down to just a couple of seconds.
Yeah, a couple of seconds, but that couple of seconds was enough. That was an amazing Terra Ghost immediately. Simone saw, had the entire game plan already in his mind. He already knew, I'll survive a foul play later on. It's fine. All right, that was some amazing gameplay there to be had, because you, again, with that play with the Ursaluna could just as well have protected. And in that, the following turn, the Ursaluna could have just gone off with the onslaught of terrifying the opponent with Hyper Voice, with Blood Moon, with Earth Power. But instead, Simone reading into Nikolaj reading Simone. So it's like level upon level upon level of play here. So that is what Worlds is about, and that is what I'm really excited about to see.
It's all about onions, folks. Don't forget, there's just layers upon layers, just like you said. It's got 50,000 of them. But yeah, that's what happens at this high level of competition, at the biggest of stages between these two great trainers. So, going into game 2, let's talk shop. What can Nikolaj do to bring us back? Because it felt like for most of the early game to mid game, he had the advantage, but then Simone was starting to claw things back in terms of that momentum, even when under Trick Room.
Yeah, so Nikolaj really recognizing well, making that Terra Grant on the Farigiraf. Exemplary play. That was such a good Terra as well for this specific position as well, where you're just able to make sure that you get your Trick Room off and have two Pokemon at full HP with that Trick Room. And I do feel like something like that, maybe a bit earlier, might be good, but it's really hard, because that is, of course, something that Simone will be prepared for, will be trying to avoid as much as possible, because Simone knows how powerful Ursaluna Blood Moon is, certainly in the hands of Nikolaj.
Yeah, makes sense. And like we said, there are so many different moments where the flow of battle sort of was in advantage of both of our trainers. It's just, it seems like At some point, we saw that Ursulina was finally able to get rid of the Zamazenta via the Earth Power, but then that invited the Amoonguss at the appropriate time when Electric Terrain was leaving the field, and it just added a whole sort of dynamic nuances. But enough of that. We have got Game 2 leads. Simone actually changing things up, going with the Zamazenta and the Chien-Pao, which he previously had not actually brought. So I'm curious to see which Pokemon was left behind versus the same lead from Nikolaj's side, sticking true to his word of bringing all of the joy and bundle in that little penguin's backsack.
Yeah, that is the good thing about Chien-Pao actually here, because we saw instantly lock into that Ice Spinner. Ice Spinner, of course, being a very strong Ice-type move, being able to hit the Miraidon for super effective damage, and also being able to get rid of any sort of electric terrain just as well. So these are things that have to be considered here, where, of course, you have the speed ties going on as well, because as long as Miraidon and the Chien-Pao are both at neutral speed, this might be a speed tie. But then there comes the Iron Bundle in play with a potential Ice Wind, having the control over the field, as the Terra Electric is actually the one thing coming out from this Miraidon, and this is going to hurt. I can feel it already. Icy Wind coming out from Iron Bundle, going into the Zamazenta and the Chien-Pao. We have a little bit of Trick Room game going on again, as the critical hit onto the Zamazenta did a little bit more, you know, you got that squish a little bit more, as the Electro Drift is coming out from this Miraidon into that Zamazenta slot. This is absolutely a devastating move. Zamazenta, the defensive Pokemon, is gone. It is away, and only Chien-Pao is left on the field right now.
Yeah, and that is why it's so crucial to be able to identify whether you want to go on the offensive or not. But the action is not over just yet. Ice Spinner, now that the Dragon type is no longer part of Miraidon due to the terrestrialization, it is going to be able to survive that. But also, its electric terrain is now removed from the field. This does, however, bring in a fresh slot from Simone's side, that being the Calyrex Shadow Rider, even though, of course, it was quite detrimental that the Zamazenta has already gone, one of your two restricted, and arguably one of the best ones too.
Yeah, being gone, the electric terrain being gone there, the speed on the Iron Bundle is no longer in favor of it, as this Calyrex is just able now to fully unleash its fury as it did in Game 1. We do know that the Chien-Pao has now a lowered speed stat, but it does not matter because you have that priority Sucker Punch. So even if the Iron Bundle is attempting to go, for example, for an Ice Wind, trying to get that speed control a little bit back, it will come to naught as long as we have a double up onto this Iron Bundle. But, however, it's the Miraidon that's actually switching out.
Yeah, it's going to be switching out for the Farigiraf and wants to make sure that it can be immune to any sort of astral barrages that will likely, let's be completely honest, come out from this Calyrex, especially because it's going for the Ghost Terror, going for all of the damage that it could muster up in this scenario, especially when escorted by that Chien-Pao. That also has some really good options of going for it. Astral Barrage, most importantly, will break the Focus Sash, of course, onto the Iron Bundle, bring it down to its one last remaining hit point. But the question is, does this Chien-Pao try to focus down onto that slot or not? We're not going to see just yet. Icy Wind, however, will be targeting breaking the Focus Sash on the Calyrex. Most importantly, actually slowing things down, much to Simone's detriment. We've got the Ruination actually missing. It would have been such an important move onto the Farigiraf that we know is so bulky.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a very good move there to be able to connect at the very least. Like putting that Farigiraf already at 50%, giving you access to potentially pick it up with a Psychic and then followed by an Ice Spinner, for example. But now you have to really play around this a bit, because I do think that was a really good play by Simone, trying to cover for the Farigiraf, switching in there, because Astral Barrage would have picked up the KO onto the Miraidon there. So trying to see the different levels of play that could have happened there, but very well insight by Simone, as we have the Protect coming out from the Calyrex, trying to keep itself safe for just another turn as the freeze dry is coming out from the Iron Bundle, trying to break this focus sash on this pesky Calyrex. Oh no, it's already been broken. My bad. As the Ruination is coming out and it's missing again, unfortunately, onto the Iron Bundle as the foul play is coming out just as well, trying to pick up the KO under this Calyrex Shadow Rider, but unfortunately going into that protect.
Yeah, that is just so unfortunate. This is the thing. Sometimes we get accuracy percentages, and sometimes they're true, but sometimes they also tell a bit of a tale every now and then, and that seems to be the case with this Ruination. So unfortunate, but regardless, we got a bit of a situation where Nikolaj's clearly trying to focus down on the Calyrex. Simone is receptive of that. Henceforth, why we see the switch out from itself into, of course, the Raging Bolt, which is such a prominent piece for Simone. Clearly not actually bringing the Amoonguss yet again because of the weird matchup in this scenario as the Farigiraf goes for the Protect.
Yeah, just trying to make sure that it stays safe for another turn as Freeze Dry is going into that Raging Bolt, doing massive amount of damage. That is the positive thing, of course. If you are that Focus Sash item, you can fully invest into that special attack as the Icy Wind will finally pick up the kill onto this Iron Bundle. Finally gone down, but at the cost of a Chien-Pao that has been lured to its speed a bit, and a lot of HP from this Raging Bolt just as well.
Yeah, exactly, and this is the sort of speed dynamic that's more in favor of Ruination combos, essentially, where you've got the Chien-Pao being faster than the Raging Bolt, which is definitely what you want to see if you've got a very powerful move that can essentially hit a two-shot within the range to be able to just put it just a bit over. But we have got the new bring, actually, to this set, the Zamazenta from Nikolaj's side, clearly showing that he means business, and what a perfect Pokemon to bring, especially when you're facing a Pokemon such as Chien-Pao.
Yeah, exactly. Chien-Pao not really providing as much pressure as it would usually, but thanks to that Ruination, of course, you are still able to chip down as much as possible. The only unfortunate thing is, of course, this Farigiraf is just being on the field and is very hard to deal with, very tough, really, as you do have a Calyrex in the back, which would love to click Astro Barrage, but as long as this Farigiraf is there, you're not really able to do it either.
No, you're not. It's just very awkward situation as we got Behemoth Bash, picks up the KO, gets rid of the cat, knocks it out with the critical as well, and absolutely solidifies its spot as the supreme, I would say, cat versus dog scenario matchup. And Raging Bolt, not quite enough to pick up the KO onto the Farigiraf, as the Psychic, it does just the same, brings it down to 12 hit points remaining. But this is sort of what Simone is looking for when it comes to putting Pokemon within range of being swept up by the Calyrex. Sure, the Calyrex is a ghost type at the moment. It's got Astral Barrage, which is his preference, but there is some room to be able to start targeting down the Zamazenta as quickly as possible. But I don't think Psychic is enough without a Life Orb to go for the Farigiraf, but we're going to have to see what Simone does.
Yeah, that's a lot of eggs in one basket here to get this Psychic KO, but that is what Simone is gonna need here to try and get that KO. Because as soon as that Farigiraf is gone, we do have somehow speed picking up again, because the Calyrex is able to then Astro Barrage, for example, as long as he's calling correct with the White Guards, or just Psychic into the Miraidon, or either the Zamazenta slot. As the Farigiraf is actually opting to protect here, so let's take a look. Protect from the Farigiraf, meaning that the Psychic will not work this time around. We're not even gonna know if this would have been enough for a KO. The Zamazenta is now free to move. What it wants to do is Behemoth Bash into the Raging Bolt and will be picking up the KO there, meaning it is a lone king on its horse versus 3 more Pokemon to go.
Yeah, and this is definitely not what you want to be looking at against, should I say, if you're Simone. Sure, you got game 1 up, but this is looking like it's in Nikolaj's favor. You're going to have to be able to sort of split your attacks right now, and you're also up against a Wide Guard user, so you have to go for Psychic in order to pick up the KO on the Farigiraf, but then you want to try to go for the Astral Barrage to take advantage of as much damage output as you can onto the Zamazenta, which, like we said, does have Wide Guard, and you're just in this awkward spot where there's just too little resource availability left for Simone to be able to essentially run away with this game or puncture the board in a way to his favor. But we're going to have to find out. As Psychic will be enough to pick up the third round.
So that's probably something that Nikolaj did know beforehand, knowing, like, of course, how bulky its Farigiraf is. Getting the boost here. Let's see how much this Behemoth Bash is doing. This is, of course, a Focus Sash Calyrex, so it will take a bit more than the usual Life Orb variants. But now you are with one Pokemon versus two, and a Zamazenta that's still at full. We saw earlier Zamazenta completely be annihilated at a +2 Life Orb variant of Calyrex Shadow, but I don't believe a Calyrex at only +1 is able to even dent this Zamazenta.
Ooh. Oh, but there's no Wide Guard. Astral Barrage is going to come out if there's a critical hit. This might just run away with the game for Simone, but there is not. Zamazenta is able to hold on, allowing Nikolaj to go for the Behemoth Bash in order to pick up this very, very needed Game 2 win. From that range, more than enough. He's able to go ahead and force the Game 3 that we have all been wanting.
Yes, this is what I want. This, like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
O2 wins against, like, solid players, still entertaining to watch. But this is definitely a player. These two players, both at 2-0, they know they want this. They want to fight for this. They're scrambling for, especially given the history right now. Simone has taken game 1, and then Nikolaj said, like, wait a minute. On our last 2 sets. No. This is not how the story goes, my friend. So immediately retaliating with its Zamazenta and with the trusty Farigiraf, to say at the very least. So what are the adaptations here? What do we think is the way to go? Because I do feel Chien-Pao was a good call. Unfortunately, the Ruination wasn't really flipping on the right side.
Well, it definitely wasn't. It wasn't flipping anywhere. It wasn't landing. It wasn't doing it. It was just not able to, get much out of the tank, unfortunately. But the thing is, even though I feel like Chien-Pao had an interesting spot there and kind of made sense in one aspect, you're able to go ahead and at least deal enough damage or start comboing up with, let's say, a Zamazenta or a Raging Bolt in this case to pick up the KOs, the sneaky ones. I don't know. I feel like Redirection may actually have a bit more room, in my opinion, versus I would say the Ice Spinner sort of scenario priority of being able to get rid of the electric terrain, because at some point Miraidon's going to come back in unless you pick up a KO. So if you're going to try to force the Terra, okay, sure, but you're still taking so much damage from the Terra Electric Miraidon. So whilst having the Rage Powder accessible with the Amoonguss, maybe you could try to go for a more different approach, I would say, to be able to start slowing things down a tiny bit, get a regeneratability as we saw Simone do in game 1. So even though I feel like Amoonguss doesn't kind of make sense in this matchup, at the same time it kind of does. And we saw that Blood Moon Ursaluna, I don't think it was brought in that game 2 from Nikolaj, and he was able to win. So
that was Zamazenta there putting in the power there, and it's just as you said. Like, despite Spore not really being a viable option, you do still have the protect Mr. President kind of strategy where you are able to just redirect and make sure that your character is able to dish out as much damage. So let's take a look at this game 3. We have the same leads from Nikolaj going with the Miraidon and the Iron Bundle. What we have from Simone's side, we do have the Zamazenta, and what I do believe is Amoonguss. I'm trying to think what's a smaller Pokemon
what's
like that.
short enough to be there. It has to be Amoonguss. There's no doubt about it. Wait, no! It's just a very small Chien-Pao. It's okay. We love you too, Chien-Pao. But no, it is the Chien-Pao once again with the Zamazenta. So fascinating. We've got a scenario where the Chien-Pao is just going to be able to go ahead and essentially go on the offensive. This is sort of the combo that we're talking about, that there is a case that you could try to go for the Ruination and maybe the follow-up with the Zamazenta. But the problem is, once again, you are susceptible to this Miraidon's outrageous damage output. You know the speed is always an advantage from Nikolaj's side. So Simone didn't go on the defensive in game 2. It cost him. Let's see if it's going to happen again in game 3.
Yeah, Protect coming out from Iron Bundle, keeping itself safe right as well. Trying to see what is Simone's game plan here. That's the power of Live Up just as well as we have the Icy Wind. Trying to get that speed control with the Chimpao actually, lowering any potential speed here on the opposing side. While this Zamazenta is still able to go for a body press. Let's see what the target was. That was the Miraidon here. So trying to see what Nikolaj's plan is. He really, Nikolaj now realizing, okay, you wanna attack my Miraidon. How can I avoid losing my Miraidon here? And I think the option is pretty much what happened in game 2.
Yeah, exactly. And I do really like the fact that Simone went on the offensive there, even though we're sort of talking about, okay, maybe the defensive. It's like, but that's a bit too obvious. He goes on the offensive, and now there's a mind game of, okay, well, I'm Simone. I don't play defensively. What is that play style? I don't know what that is, but he did very easily lull Nikolaj into false sense of expectation, go with a Protect right now on the Zamazenta, still yet again go for the Icy Wind in order to be able to reset the speed situations as we see the Terra Electric coming out from Nikolaj's Miraidon.
Yeah, Terra Electric, we already know the amount of hurt it can put on us. As Ice Wind is coming out, no Protect, no White Guard. This means this could very well just be another kill again onto the Zamazenta. The speeds have been dropped. Electro Drift coming out. It has a giant idea. It's coming out. Electro Drift going into that Chimpao slot instead of the Zamazenta, meaning the Zamazenta is able to go for an attack here, and a very strong one at that, because this body press will hurt to say the least.
Yeah, I know, and just so many different variations of chicken being played right here. The Zamazenta deals so much damage with the body press onto the Miraidon, and now we've got a scenario where the Calyrex is brought on the field, but the problem for Simone's side is the availability of speed control from that Iron Bundle. You got this Icy Wind that allows yourself to be put in a spot where you can actually get outsped. However, you've got Wide Guard that's available in Zamazenta. That could be a way to get around this and hopefully actually try to pick up a KO onto the Miraidon. This could very well be what Simone needs, especially with that Ghost Terra.
Yeah, Ghost Terra activated again. Throw Barrage coming in, very strong and very hot in just a second. White Guard coming out, making sure that no speed control is there. This is the best defensive option here you can have, as the Ice Wind is coming out, so that is protecting both of these targets, meaning right now this Calyrex is able to unleash all of his fury right now into this one move, taking revenge for the fallen Chimpao there.
Yeah, Astral Barrage will be unleashed. Nothing will hold it back. It will outspeed. It will pick up the KO Miraidon. It will also break a Focus Satchel, bring it down to 1 hit point for the Iron Bundle. And guess what? There's an additional thing, Shmon. It's also gonna get +1 special attack, Snowball mode activated against the Little Penguin.
Yeah, it is that time. You have your Sash still intact. Farigiraf is on the field, and Farigiraf is actually might be the answer that Nikolaj is looking for, because you do have one option that this Iron Bundle still has, which is that pesky Encore. Encoring this Zamazenta into that White Guard could prove to be very useful right now, meaning that this character is not able to dish as much damage as it would like to, as his Farigiraf is then able to set up freely another trick room for a potential Pokemon in the back that I am sensing, you know, like I'm feeling him. I'm feeling a bear connection. But we have the Protect coming out from Calyrex, trying to check what is happening. We do have the Encore happening right now, and because of that Protect there with that Calyrex, it could very well be the next target. So White Guard coming out, and now we have the Farigiraf being able to just go for foul play, trying to break the Sash first, and then maybe later on go for a Trick Room.
Yeah, exactly that. And we've got a scenario where sort of both of our trainers are trying to obviously establish more of the board as much as they can. The Trick Room option does give a bit of an indication that it's most likely going to be the Blood Moon Ursaluna in the back. It makes sense, and that's clearly what Nikolaj needs to try to pivot towards, given that Simone has just established absolute dominance when it comes to non-trick room related conditions, but we've got the Zamazenta finally now being switched out for the Amoonguss. The return of the mushroom. Freeze Dry goes into the Calyrex. Can I pick up a cheeky icy freeze? But thankfully it does not. We see the Psychic pick up the KO. Guess what? Now you're facing a +2 Calyrex Shadow Rider, as well as redirection right next to it, as if things couldn't get worse. But the foul play cannot pick up the KO, needed a critical hit to be able to run away and get rid of this board piece. But we've got the reveal, Shmon. There's no Blood Moon in the back, it's just the Zamazenta.
My bear senses were off. It is just Zamazenta, as you said. Now, this is a very tricky situation because you have an Amoonguss on the field. And guess what? There's no more electric terrain. Spore is an option that you can push left or right. The Zamazenta is not able to dish as much damage to this Amoonguss. You do have a super effective Psychic that can come out from this Farigiraf, but Amoonguss will be able to put something to sleep if it wants to. Rather, it is going for Protect the President. It is Rage Powder coming out, making sure that this Calyrex is able to do what it wants. And it's just an encore from this Farigiraf, making sure that it keeps getting redirected into that Amoonguss just as well. Behemoth Bash going into Amoonguss. Critical hit, doing a little bit more than what you would expect there, as foul play will be the next thing going into that Amoonguss. And you can see the strategy that Simone is doing right now, making sure that these Pokemon keep hurting themselves a little bit thanks to that pesky little helmet.
Yeah, exactly, and just making sure that you lock the Farigiraf into foul play rather than Psychic, just to make sure that the Amoonguss can survive an additional turn in order to be able to offer that redirection available for the Calyrex to run away and finally dispatch of the Zamazenta piece. That is what Simone needs to do right now. Nikolaj recognizes this too, and henceforth, why we're going to see the redirection yet again come online.
Yeah, Acid Brush coming out. It is not going to affect the Farigiraf, but right now we don't mind that Farigiraf being on the field, as the Acid Brush at +2 Terraghost is going to kill the Zamazenta. The defensive Pokemon, maybe, but not defensive enough when there's a Calyrex at now +3 on the field.
Yeah, and that's all she's going to write, folks. Foul play is doing squat against this Mushroom. 59 hit points remaining. The Calyrex Shadow Rider has absolutely dominated this game, as well as Simone Sanvito picking up the win 2-1 versus Nikolaj.
Yeah, that's going to be a stat that Simone is going to enjoy, especially after the last 2 times losing to Nikolaj and now being able to win it all back at the World Championship. That is something that you love to see as a player yourself. You're gearing up for, okay, gotta shake off this, and we saw it in game 1. The tidal wave, like, it was a very balanced game in that regard. Game 2 was a little bit more on Nikolaj's side the whole time, and there was the backpedaling from Simone in here. But this game made it very clear that Simone knew what was gonna happen and tried to adapt as much as possible. Because honestly, that Calyrex, amazing Pokemon. Who would have known?
I know. It's like, what? Like, are people aware of how broken this is? They might. It might be a candidate for winning the Worlds. Who knows? But what I did really like, and I agree with, is the adjustments from Simone in that game 3, recognizing, oh, hey, wait. Well, it seems like I like having this sort of Chien-Pao pressure when it comes to the Ruination and also the Ice Spin. It gives me a bit more options. It forces my opponent to respect my Chien-Pao more because I've got an Assault Vest. So surely it makes Zamazenta and the Chien-Pao viable targets. We saw the mind games of Simone refusing to protect the Zamazenta. He's like, no, you know what? I'm just gonna stick it. I know Terra Electric Life Orb, Hadron Engine, Electro Drift picks up the KO. I know it does. I know I've got Water Terra, but you know what? I'm still gonna stick with it in place on the battlefield. Go for the body press, force the mind games. Nikolaj chose the Chien-Pao that allowed Zamazenta to still be on the field, get a body press, 2-shot onto the Miraidon, cool. And then bring in the Calyrex. And the moment the Calyrex gets brought in, the fact that Miraidon's got around 30-40% of its HP left, it's within range, baby, of Astral Barrage Terror Ghost. That's all you need. That's it. And you've got Wide Guard? Sure. Icy Wind's Blood. What's Icy Wind? I don't know anymore. I can't hear. All I know is Astral Barrage. Bum, bum, bum. And that's what we saw. And he did a really good job. He left Raging Bolt. He left. He just chucked it in the bin. He's like, you know what? Redirection actually works really well. And it proved how he was able to take what he learned from game 1, take what he learned from game 2, and try to formulate a combination of that knowledge, take it to game 3, and it just worked so well for him. So fair play to him.
Absolutely. I think you put it right on, put the hammer right on the nail there, as it is just the way that it was played with the Among Us there was just an amazing feature, especially when you saw the Encore coming out. The Encore onto the Calyrex, just making sure that the Paragraph wasn't not able to KO this Among Us, and the Among Us on the field was able to just annoy both these Pokemon if they're not able to access their best moves, which is Body Press, which is you can't really click because then you'll get Encored into that as well. And then the Calyrex can just run away with the game as well. So in that regard, very well positioned there, and smart play by Simone there, just recognizing the options and the flow charting really of that entire game. He had the vision. He had the Calyrex noggin. It was just humongous, really.
He just needed to get the paintbrush, chuck some paint on it, and just go at ham. And he did it to an incredible standard. Props to Simone. But of course, commiserations, but congrats as well to Nikolaj. He showed such a strong performance from his side of things. It just didn't work out in that game 3. The adaptation, I felt like it was a bit too slow of a moment to be able to bring the Blood Moon in, because the electric terrain had just been delayed so much that even if there was Trick Room and you did have Blood Moon Ursaluna, you're still going to be in an awkward spot. Clearly, he weighed a bit more on the Zamazenta there, but it didn't work out. But still, there's a lot more action to go here at Worlds, of course. That has been Swiss round number 3, a bit of a long one, bit of a doozy, but a great fun set regardless. What we're going to do is we're going to cut to a short break, where we will be back with Swiss round number 4. So don't go anywhere. But if you do go somewhere, not only get refreshments, go over to the mainstream, check stuff out there, and come back as well when you're ready. Have them on both same time. It's awesome. It's a great time.
We like them, they like us.